The Nissan Ariya. Now, my goodness me, I have waited a long time to drive this car. I first saw the Ariya in a studio over a year ago, but today Nissan have finally given me the keys and I've got an empty test track on a lovely Friday afternoon. Even though it says prototype vehicle down the side, this is essentially the car you can go out and buy in your local dealership. Let's see if the wait has been worth it. Well, firstly, a good thing is that this interior is still as impressive as it was in the studio when I saw it over a year ago. And the things that really stand out are the design. I mean, the design just looks so different from everything else in the mid-size electric SUV class. It just looks, well, looks typically Japanese, and it looks like a bit of a high-end boutique luxury suite in a hotel. Now there's all these other little design quirks in here as well. There's something called Kamiko, which is this pattern that's been inspired by Japanese woodcraft. You see it in the front grille, and it's dotted around the cabin as well, on the speaker grills here, in the doors. Down at the bottom, underneath the dashboard, the light down there is supposed to resemble typical Japanese light lanterns. It's just brimming with lovely little touches. There's lots of electronic wizardry in here as well. This center console can slide backwards and forwards. Look at that. Play with that for hours. And then you can open a little cubby here by the press of a button. Look at that. Isn't that fantastic? But it's not just that, it's the sense of quality in here. It's so good. Right then, that's enough of the chatter. Let's go and see what this car is like out on the road. This today is the first proper taste of a car that's been so long in the making. And it really has been so long in the making. I mean, Nissan first launched the Leaf back in 2010, and they've been very slow to sort of do the second part of their electric journey. And few people thought they'd actually been left behind, but no, Nissan have finally launched this Ariya. Now, I have got a few caveats to this video. Firstly, we're at Millbrook, big testing ground, so I'm not really getting a proper real world, proper British B road, A road, that kind of feeling sitting here driving this car at the moment. But, you know, you take what you're given, don't you? The other thing is, this is a very early pre-production car. When I say very early, I mean very, very early. I mean, if this car were any earlier, I'd probably be sitting here with a racing harness, helmet, and a big emergency stop button here. So this is a very early car, but it does give us some proper kind of hints of what the car will feel like, the car that you actually go out and buy in the showrooms. Right, the first thing I'll say about this car is it feels surprisingly stiff. I was expecting this car to feel very soft, very comfortable, very sort of a bit wafty. It's not. It feels very kind of together. When you hit a sort of a pothole or a expansion joint, and there are plenty on this test track, trust me, the whole car does sort of shimmy and judder a little bit. Admittedly so, this car is on 20-inch wheels, but you can get it on 19, so I would probably go for those. But yeah, surprisingly kind of sort of planted and in touch with the road. Another thing I really like actually is the steering. Now, as is so often the case with so many modern cars, particularly electric cars, the steering can feel so kind of lifeless and dead. But in this, the steering is actually quite sharp, but it's also sending you quite a few little messages about what's going on, which is again, something I wasn't expecting. I thought this was going to be a big, soft, squidgy SUV, but there's quite a lot to this car actually. The other thing that I'm really getting from this car is how quiet it is. Now, I know that sounds a stupid thing to say about an electric car, and I say it a lot on this channel, but just because you're driving an electric car doesn't mean it's always going to be quiet, because as soon as you take away that engine, all the other noises like road noise and wind noise, they're all amplified. This though is so eerily quiet. Yes, of course I can hear the tyres, as you'd expect, but the rest of the driving experience is so hushed. I mean, there's no wind noise or anything. And again, because this is an early pre-production car, I was expecting there to be quite a few rattles and all those kinds of noises associated with a car that's pretty, an early build. But there's none of that whatsoever. So that really that's a good indication of what the final car is going to feel like. And it does feel a lot quieter, a lot more refined, a lot more hushed than something like a VW ID4 and definitely a Ford Mustang Mach-E. Okay, let's talk about things that I'm not that impressed about. Firstly, there are bits of this interior which I think are a bit of a letdown. Firstly, the gear selector feels a little bit too cheap, a little bit too nasty, especially for a car costing this much money. Other things, well, this Japanese-inspired woodcraft plastic trim in the doors, which I mentioned earlier, when you're actually driving, you glance down, you look at it, it just looks a bit unfinished, a bit too cheap in my mind. It's a shame because I think the rest of the interior is really, really good. Things like the Nissan Leaf, those kinds of cars in Nissan's model range, they've dated quite badly. The interiors haven't aged very well. This car, I mean, it's a real step change for Nissan in terms of the different materials used and the design. I love this dashboard. I think it is designed beautifully. Now, whilst this fake wood trim does look a little bit too fake in my mind, the thing I really like about this area are the haptic feedback controls. In lots of cars, lots of modern day cars these days, there's haptic feedback. It's kind of the in thing at the moment to fit your car with haptic feedback. Here it works really well. I just love the way the icons are all backlit. It looks great at night. That's repeated on the center console as well. Again, this area looks so cool in the dark. And there are a couple of little features here as well. You've got your drive mode, so you've got Eco, Standard and Sport. You can operate the little drawer here as well. Works electronically. That's super, I love that. And you've also got e-pedal. Now this is worth talking about actually. Now in the Nissan Leaf was one of the first cars to come.
You can interrupt the voice prompt and give a command immediately by pressing the push to talk button. Say phone, navigation, audio, information, vehicle information.
Cancel!
EV to see more commands.
Go away!
Cancelling voice recognition.
I'll come back to that in a bit. Where was I? E-pedal, yes. So the Nissan Leaf was one of the first cars to come with e-pedal. And effectively, in the Leaf, it allows one pedal driving. So when you take your foot off the throttle, the car comes to a complete halt. In this car, it doesn't work quite in the same fashion. You don't have that one pedal kind of driving. What it is, in this car, is slightly a more kind of aggressive version of regenerative braking. It does work very well, and it's a mode that you'll probably be using quite a lot during the city, when you're driving through the city, and perhaps when you're driving pretty quickly on country roads. It just adds that extra bit of regeneration and puts a bit more power into the batteries. So that's really good. Not only is the quality good, but I love the design. I love the two screens in front of you, which work really well. The thing I don't like about it, and you'll have noticed it just a second ago, is the voice activation. Now you can activate it by saying, "Hey Nissan,"
please say or select a command.
Which works
Cancelling voice recognition.
Which works very well. You can also activate it by pressing the voice activation button on the steering wheel. Now I'm constantly pressing it. It is too close to where you put your thumbs when you're turning the steering wheel, and so you are driving along and all of a sudden the lady just chirps in. It feels way more.
Please say or select a command.
See, piss off. I'll come back to you in a minute. Don't like you. Go away.
Cancelling voice recognition.
No, I'll wait, because there's too much sun in my...
Cancelling voice recognition.
Go away. And asks what you want to do, and I haven't summoned her, and she just randomly starts talking. So I don't like that. The Ariya is based on Renault-Nissan Alliance's new electric car platform. It's also used in the Renault Megane electric as well. But it's not just the platform, it's also Nissan have used these super thin batteries, and it just means it opens so much space up in here. It feels so light and airy. Not only does it feel light and airy, it just feels more relaxed, and the whole space just works really well. This video is all about getting behind the wheel for the very first time. My studio walk around video, which you can watch by clicking in the top right, gives you a more detailed look, giving information like boot sizes for example. But in this film I will tell you about the batteries, the models and the prices. There are two sizes of batteries on offer, 63 kWh and 87 kWh, and in contrast to the Nissan Leaf, the Ariya comes with CCS charging, not CHAdeMO. The 63 has a 7.4 kilowatt onboard AC charger, while the other models have a 22 kilowatt charger. But all models, they can be DC rapid charged up to 130 kilowatts. What is very surprising is that all models get a heat pump as standard. E-Force 4-wheel drive is also available, and the top spec performance model can get to 62 miles an hour in just a little over 5 seconds. Meanwhile, prices kick off at just under £42,000, which is pretty reasonable, especially as the aforementioned heat pump, a heated front windscreen, electric front seats, the two 12.3-inch screens and a 360-degree parking camera all come as standard. The top spec performance, however, looks too pricey at 58 grand. Now overall, this isn't a sporty SUV, but neither is it a big, lumpen, wallowy SUV either. It fits really nicely between those 2 points. I think it's a really well-judged car actually. Now I will reserve my full judgment until I drive a proper production car and on proper roads, not on a test track. But from this first taste, the wait for this car has certainly been worth it.